Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and today we're in the car wash with the glow stick of destiny.
That's right. Today we are breaking the century mark. We're talking about minute 100, which begins with a barrier of pure energy and ends with Tony pouring himself a drink. Joining us on the show today, we have MarvelousTay from TwitchTV. Hello there, Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, we are thrilled to have you joining us for the first time on the show.
It
should be a lot of fun talking about the Avengers. We're just to kind of getting a bit to know you a little bit. In the sense of kind of like the Marvel films, where does the Avengers stack up for you?
For me, entirely, I mean, this is the big grounding, crucial point in this entire phase, right? This is the part that we were all waiting for. The moment we saw Iron Man hit the big screens, we all knew it was coming, but this is finally it. And this is probably one of my favorite films in that entire phase, hands down. No argument. Maybe the entire, Infinity Saga, to be honest. Such a great movie.
That's awesome. That is awesome. This is such a fun moment that we have here as Tony and it really kind of confronts Loki here at the start of Act 3. In the scope of like picking minutes, how did you end up landing on we're talking about today's minute and then Monday's minute, the very next one. What was it about this section of the film that drew you to pick them?
I think for me entirely on why I picked it is I do love when two giant ego men are battling out with verbal in one tiny room, because we're dealing with Tony, who has the ego size of the entire Avengers, Stark Tower. And then you have the ego of Logan, who thinks he is the god of all the universes. So I think that's what really intrigued me. And it's like kind of the first time you see Tony actually accepts that he is an Avenger. He accepts that he's a part of the team. This is it. And he, in a kind of weird way, he is the leader, but not. Both Captain and him go back and forth. So I think with that, that's why I liked it a lot, because we're like, that is the crucial moment. We have the entire team accept that they are the Avengers.
Yeah, I feel like that's the thing. We've been waiting for this to happen for so long. Like the whole idea that it's taken to minute 100 of the 6th movie for everyone to agree, all right, let's play nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've seen them fighting each other. We've seen them, having all sorts of spats in the lab. This is finally the chance that we get to see. You know what? Maybe I will be part of this thing, and it's nice. Right. It's nice to see, this whole thing. We're coming into this minute though. This is this point right after Tony, again, we talked about this yesterday's minute. Why did he decide to just say, you know what, I'm just going to blast that Tesseract. It looks like something that's smart to do. And it didn't work. And of course, this is when Jarvis informs him the barrier is pure energy, which I don't know. I mean, is that like such a comic book line there? Like the idea of just like the Tesseract has generated this barrier of pure energy around it and nothing can get through now.
That's why I was so shocked in that movie. I was like, this guy should know already, as he does create pure energy for his arc reactor. Because of Iron Man 2, he made the new element for his new arc reactor. Like, that is pure energy. How would you not know that would create a barrier? Like,
right.
You made it, dude. You did it. Come on now. But, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he thought for a second, because he also holds the pure energy, maybe he could break it. I don't know. It threw me for a loop when I saw it. This didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it did make me wonder, because I don't think that it did this. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the Tesseract did not do this at the beginning of the film when it was generating, when Selvig had put it in that machine at the beginning. There was no sign that it had created some form of pure energy. So I don't know if this is the iridium, now that he has that's kind of helping it to do this, or if, as you just said, is it the fact that this whole thing is now tied into Tony's massive amount of constant clean energy that they've tapped into by building this thing here at the top of Stark Tower.
So you're saying they're actually piped into the ocean cable that we saw at the beginning?
Yeah.
Is that what he's doing? Selvig is actually there because he has to pipe into the big pipe?
They need Tony's energy, right? The whole thing is like connecting to that clean energy.
It's weird, but I'll allow it.
I mean, I think is that I think they purposely created that machine to take the energy to Tesseract to make the barrier. That's kind of how I just kind of assumed.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they hardwired to the Stark Towers. That was a whole stage performance.
Different thing. Yeah, right.
That was all that was Loki saying, "Oh, look at that! I got you guys! Like right here. Look at me mocking, at your tower." It's like him, like a dog would mark on a fire hose. It's just like that. That's what he was doing
here.
He's like, "Now this is mine."
Yeah,
Loki is the dog peeing on Stark Tower.
Yeah, it's like, this is now mine. I won here. You lost.
Outstanding. Yes. No, that's perfect. Now we really need that on a shirt.
Yeah,
Loki
that's
lifting his leg over a hydrant that says Stark on it.
Oh, that is.
Well, it's perfect because it's once again two giant egos. Loki knows that he has the ego size of that entire tower, so he thinks he can out ego him in this little ego war of little mental ego war. So it's like it's perfect.
Yeah, that is so funny. And it is. I mean, exactly. Because, it's funny because Tony recognized Loki's ego, and that's what helped him actually figure this whole thing out. When he and Steve were talking on the helicarrier right before they came here, it was him talking about Loki's ego and how he wanted to have his name at the top of the biggest building and all this sort of stuff. And that was exactly the trigger. So it is the ego recognizing ego that actually draws him here, which is very funny.
It's perfect.
And I guess that's what kind of, I don't know if he actually intended there being a plan B. It's just this idea of, he sees Loki down there at kind of on the patio of his penthouse, and that's what triggers him plan B, which I guess, I don't know if plan B is just a direct confrontation of Loki, or perhaps more specifically, I need to get the Mark VII suit, and kind of like that whole thing of kind of putting, or both. I mean, I don't know, when he says on to plan B, I mean, what was your sense of what his intentions were?
What is plan B?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the moment he realized, because Tony's smart, like that guy is smart. Let's never undermine him. He's an intelligent guy. So I think it was a little bit of both. I think he was playing at it on the whim and be like, okay, I gotta trap this guy in a room for a hot minute, kind of catch him in a corner, get him mad enough, because his suit was already weakened. Prior for him to enter, his suit was weakened. And I think it was perfect play as, it's a weak suit, everything's damaged. Suit can be destroyed by his staff like easy peasy because it's how damaged. So he comes off looking weak. Loki thinks he's got the advantage because now he is caught, Iron Man into a weak point. It's like there's a hidden suit somewhere that he has no idea about. And then the whole war has begun.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit of both. I think he was like kind of winging it, but knew that if he catches Loki in this ego war and kind of like strikes him down, that he could kind of win mentally in a sense.
Well, and by like win and by just enough time for Jarvis to spin up and do its damn job. AI.
Freaking Jarvis.
Yeah. Jarvis.
Well, this is very much like part of Tony's. I don't know. I feel like it's been written so much into the franchise now, and maybe I'm just misremembering it. But I feel the idea of like Tony's delayed tech, like it's always just getting finished just in the nick of time for him to actually use it. Like I feel like I feel like if you go through all of Paul Bettany's lines when he was Jarvis before he became Vision, half of the lines are probably, "It's not quite ready, sir, but it'll be ready in just a moment."
Well, Andy, check me on this. Isn't there actually a spinning rims line in Iron Man? I could have sworn in his initial paint job, he was like, "Save it for the spinning rims" or something. I think there's something
actually. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right on that one. Yeah.
I think this is a callback.
Yeah, because I think it's when he first wanted to launch his suit in the basement, and he's like, "I don't think we're ready for it." He's like, let's go," and then he ends up shooting right out,
right,
and learning his first mistake.
It's all a spinning rims thing.
I mean, it's so fun though. I mean, it just plays into that's I think part of the nature of the character, right? Is the idea of this person who is always pushing. And we know, I mean, as this scientist that he is, that's part of kind of his whole thing is he's always pushing whatever elements of science he can. And if that means that he needs to get his suit done early, he needs to get his suit done early, and I think that's just kind of like the whole kind of just the way that he plans on all of this stuff. So it just fits in with his whole MO.
Yeah.
Oh, it's perfect because, he is the one that always wants to improve. He's always room for improvement. He always learns from mistakes. If you look in his entire movie career in the MCU, you see that when he learns one mistake for one movie, you see that his suit upgrades and fixes that one mistake. Like we kind of see in Endgame, he learns from the Avengers when Thor uses, thunder and strikes him down, that his suit absorbs it. So he learned that lesson and apply it into Endgame when he absorbs and then has this extra cannon in the sense that expands to strike down Thanos. That's what he always does, is constantly improving. With this Mark VII, he learns from Iron Man 2 when he got the suitcase that it took so damn long.
Mm-hmm.
And carrying around is just, someone can easily steal it if, because it's just a freaking suitcase. So what's better than having, a bracelet tracking suit? Why not?
That's right. That's perfect.
Falling around.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so good. Before we kind of get into this moment where he's actually confronting Loki, I just want to ask real quick, what has Loki been doing this whole time? I'm assuming that Loki saw Tony fly up and perhaps that's why he walked out. But I guess my questions, and we've talked about this a little bit, like why wasn't Loki up here with Eric? And then what has Loki been doing this whole time? I kind of like picturing him down on the patio, just kind of giggling as he watches Tony go through this whole thing with the Tesseract up above. Like, it's just like, what is he doing? I don't know. He's just standing around waiting?
I look at the other way. Like, I wonder, speaking of lessons Tony should learn, is do you really want to have a completely open greenhouse to your most sacred office and technical lab space that evildoers can just walk in and out of, right? Like, the glass is just open up there. So Loki is like hanging out, like flushing all the toilets, jumping on the beds. Like, I just imagine him just sullying the place.
Well, now that's just gone down a very dark and weird road. Loki's whole MO. I'm going to
tell you a disgusting story. It's a side story, but it makes me think of Loki here. My dad told me when he was a kid that his house was robbed by a thief, a house burglar named the Pooper, because he was so anxious that he would poop in all the toilets and leave it there and then take all your jewels and stuff and leave. So maybe that's what Loki's doing, is pooping in all of Tony's toilets. It's so gross. The Pooper.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that kid's got a legacy.
That's a title right there to keep you for a lifetime.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I kind of always thought almost like comparing to Lion King in a weird way, like Scar, when he's like, "This is it. This is my kingdom. Look at this. They're all weakened." And like he said earlier in his speech, he believes that everyone is weak. And only a true leader like himself can bring the weakened back into full strength, but they have to praise him. And I think that was this moment where he's just like, I'm going to let them all scream in terror. And then I'm going to come in like the big punchy hero, like, look at me. I can control, the Chitauri tribe. I should be your leader. I'm the one that is right in all doing. So I think for him, he's just kind of like watching the chaos begin so he can go in and be the hero. I think he was kind of mapping that out. And he has that deal with them as, in a little underlining deal, which I've learned in a book. I highly recommend to read this. It's called Thanos Titan Consumed. It was by Barry Lygan, and I think it's his last name. But little than Loki knows, in this deal that he made so he can rule Earth, the Chitauri tribe made a deal with Thanos that they needed to find a warm-blooded planet since they were living in a cold-blooded planet and they're cold-blooded creatures. Loki didn't understand that he got pretty much double underestimated because they were wanting to take over Earth to pretty much start living in Earth. That was their whole plan. And Loki had no idea. So that's even more scary to think about, is that he thought he was going to rule Earth. This is all him. This is all his. And it's like,
Yeah, right.
he knows that Thanos was like, you're just a little pawn in my play.
And that's that. So
yeah.
was that question about that book? Is that like canon to this Chitauri?
Mm-hmm.
Like
yes,
not
it's canon
to this Avengers Chitauri. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really great read. It brings in a lot of puzzle pieces of how Thanos got to that point of battle in New York to the Battle of Wakanda and so on and so forth. You see how it all kind of came together, and it's really interesting read.
Yeah,
Does
totally.
it explain like his thinking in, because I mean this is something we've talked about a little bit in giving like the scepter, which I don't know, I'm assuming he knew was the Mind Stone, to somebody else to take care of instead of just holding on to it himself or coming himself. Is that ever?
He knew that was the Mind Stone, and he knew that was what he needed to rule to take over the Avengers, as Loki already knew. Loki's also very smart. He knows that by himself, without anything else, he couldn't battle the Avengers. Even without his brother, he couldn't do it. So he needed them to break apart for him to win. And that was his entire plan. But to do that, he needed something powerful enough to kind of do that. And the Mind Stone was a perfect decision with that scepter, as he could control however he pleased. And if someone said to him, no, man, no, sit back down, you're just a little kid. He's like, oh yeah, you think that? Mind control. Like, now you're mine.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
it was perfect play for him. Perfect play.
Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, all right. So we're at this point. Loki and Tony are basically going to have this ego face-off, as we've been kind of talking about. Tony lands on the car wash, and it starts taking off his armor, which is just always fantastic to watch. It's just such a cool, well-designed bit of tech that they have here. It's incredibly fun. And they both slowly head inside. And at this point, they kind of start this conversation where Tony, I don't know, I love there's a shot as he's going through the car wash, like a close-up of his face as he's just kind of eyeballing Loki and looking at him. And he's got this look in his eye that is just very intense and intent. And like there's this, I don't know, it's almost like an eye roll, like this guy sort of thing. Like there's something about Tony's reaction here that, I don't know, I love this sense that we're getting of this character who, I mean, we've known him since the start of this entire Marvel Cinematic Universe with the first Iron Man. There's something that I think really kind of portrays the wheels spinning in his head as he's really trying to kind of put his plan together and how he's going to do this. I mean, yeah, I mean, what are we getting out of like this walk between the two as they're heading inside to face off?
Well, that's it. First of all, that's it. Like, it is the face-off, and they have to walk around each other. But, you know, we just watched, for another show we just watched Mission Impossible. And this reminds me of a Brian De Palma shot. Like, that close-up of the character looking back past camera is, like, a super dramatic thinking shot that we get in some of Brian De Palma's like focus on like noir camera. And I just love it. It's so fast, but it's a very different shot on Tony than we've gotten from him in certainly the rest of this movie. And I think it amps up the conversation that's about to happen. I love it.
Oh, it's a great scene. Also, I love the little detail is that when he starts to disassemble, he has to look straight to have the headpiece to take off, and then he looks off back to Loki because he was looking at him the entire time. Then he look straight and then come back because he knew what if the headpiece would not been taken off if he had to keep going. But I think
catch though, yeah.
It's not as fun if he's just like, ow, ow, ow,
yeah,
ow. You got my hair. Ow.
Yeah, exactly. It still dawns on me to this day that how the hell does your hair look that good?
Right.
When the helmet is off, or being how tight fitted that helmet is. How does the hair look volumized and all poofing? Studio level. It still does not make sense to me.
It's like a salon dryer, though. Like in there, that Jarvis is put in a salon dryer in the helmet, so it's constantly blowing and circulating.
Yeah. or coming at him, something. I don't know. It just drives me bonkers.
Well, same thing with his clothes, which is something I always bring up. Like, why
Yeah.
are they not wrinkled? Like,
Yeah.
they're so compressed inside that suit.
He's wearing them under the suit.
Yeah. Or why do you seem like that sweating? Like, I'm going to be sweating in a metal suit, being
Yeah,
contacted
no
by
kidding.
sun all the
Yeah.
time, holding on my come on, no, this is insane. Does not make sense to me. Science, where's the science?
Yeah, right.
Come on, yeah, more real
Yeah.
science in these
Yes.
movies.
Right. But I mean, for me, it's perfect because they're both studying each other. They're both like learning. They're both like reading each other. They think they got one another. And once again, Loki has that mindset of thinking, oh, I got him. Like, he's now in my turf. He's fallen into my trap. I got him. And with Tony, he's like, all right, I can see that you think you won. Like, you're coming out on top. Like, he speaks a little prior. And that's cute. Now, man, I got this. Just watch.
I mean, it comes out so perfectly, as Loki walks in and please tell me you're going to appeal to my humanity. And Tony's response is just so perfect to Tony and fits so well with everything he's trying to do here. Actually, I'm planning to threaten you. Like, just the way that, like, he's playing against kind of the expectations of the scene. It's fun to kind of get that, what he's doing here, and this whole idea of threatening him.
Oh, it's perfect. I also love the entire time we see that entire minute. I love that he constantly is covering his wrist because he wants to make sure that Loki's never, doesn't see that he wasn't wearing a bracelet prior. And the whole time you see him, he's behind large structures. He's behind the big balcony, and his hands are always behind his back. He wants to make sure that he doesn't see it. Though that what throws me off is that he ends up pouring a drink, and you can blatantly see that there is no bracelet. So it's like, how is blind is Loki that he does not see this empty wrist and then magically appear a bracelet? Threw me off.
Yeah, good point. Although I will say, I mean, the camera comes up, so the camera is definitely higher over the bar, and we can definitely see that his wrists
So maybe,
don't
Loki
have the
didn't
bracelets.
have an angle.
But yeah, because Loki is still lower, and
That's true.
the bar I'd like to think might be high enough where he's not getting a good eye line on the wrists. But I don't know. That's just a guess. But yeah, it's an interesting setup that he has though here, and it's fun, and this is why I like the scripting here in the scene, because Loki's talking about appealing to my humanity, stalling me, all these sorts of things that Loki is saying. And yes, to a certain extent, Tony is doing all of those things, but all Tony ever says is, no, I'm threatening you. I'm planning on threatening you.
This is the part where we threaten. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's that build up. Like, Loki thinks he's going to get it, like the big breaking point, but Tony's like, no, I'm going to let you marinate on this. I want to let you marinate, because it wasn't until he starts walking towards him where he says, to him, there's no point of you coming in on top. And that was the threat. That was the point of him being scared.
Well, and he does call it out, too. Loki says, stalling me won't change anything. And Tony is actually stalling him, and it does change things.
Yeah.
I love that. It's such a power move to call it out like that. It's like the Penn and Teller of threatening conversations. Like, I'm telling you how I'm doing it, and it's still working.
And it makes Loki terrified, because then he realizes that Tony does know who he is, and he does read him. Because Loki always believes that he is completely misunderstood and no one knows him. Well, now there is one person that knows him, and that's what scares the living gods out of him, to the point that he will end up throwing him over the building, because he knows that if one person knows him, the whole thing will be solved.
Yeah, right. That's actually a really good question. Do you think Loki would have responded so aggressively against any of the other Avengers by throwing them through the window later? Like, or is that reserved just for Tony because Tony's effectively calling him out? Possibly a question we can't answer, but it's interesting.
I think regardless, if someone calls him out, he will react aggressive.
Yeah.
And act in fear, like he kind of does with Black Widow in that whole dialogue, when she finally cracks the code of what he was doing and why he wanted to be, on the ship. He gets scared, and then because of him being scared, he reacts aggressive, because, like he says in this entire movie, when people are scared, they are weakened and they need strength. So for him, when he gets caught, he needs to make sure he throws in every punch that he can get to be back on top of being a terrifying person.
Right. Right.
And there is an element also of this whole idea of, as we're talking about kind of the varying things between their back and forth, the fact that when Tony walks in and he's just taken his armor off, Loki's first thing is like, well, you should have left your armor on.
Mm-hmm.
And it does make me wonder if Tony had his suit on. I don't think that Loki would have thrown him out the window like he does. I think he's fully taking advantage of the fact that he does think that he has a one up on Tony here, and is like, oh, okay, I'm going to toss him out the window and get rid of him, without realizing, of course, that Tony has this ulterior motive with all of this.
And we should say any talk of the bracelets should be reserved for tomorrow, because he doesn't actually put the bracelets on until minute 101.
Yes.
So we know
Sorry,
that.
I know I'm getting ahead.
No. I'm just saying, it all feels like it's so of a piece, but he does draw it out long enough, like to the point that, like, I had to go check. I was like, I think he doesn't put them on until tomorrow. So
yeah, exactly. Sorry, that was my fault. I jumped a little bit too ahead. I get too excited.
No.
That's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
But
he's stalling even us.
Exactly.
Right.
It's just kind of crazy thinking about, because then I have an ongoing question about, what if he does leave the suit on, because of the actions what happened in Age of Ultron with the Mind Stone and Jarvis? Would the staff control Jarvis in a sense, like how he takes apart the Mind Stone and realizes there's another mind into it? If Loki staffs it, will he control it? Is my good question.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because as we'll see in a couple minutes, the scepter doesn't penetrate the arc reactor in his chest when he taps him on the chest, and there's not that sense of control. But it does beg the question, like, what ends up kind of leading to that connection that we'll get to by the time we get to Ultron,
It was an ongoing question that I asked myself when I was watching this. It's like, wait a minute, what if he does leave the suit on? What would actually happen?
Right.
Then we would be in a world of hurt, because then Tony would be trapped in his own suit that he can't control.
Oh, that's actually a terrifying idea, of being trapped in a suit that something else is controlling. It's like being inside of Ultron.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it's like Ultron, but they didn't quite realize that Ultron could be even scarier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
It's terrifying. I was when I was watching this, it's like, oh, that's going to be really messed up.
Yeah,
jeez,
that is messed up. Wow. Okay, well, thanks for that, Taylor. God, Nightmare Factory.
Right? It's terrifying. But, I mean, that entire scene of him walking very, like, light and fluff, like, oh, yeah, no, I'm going to threaten you. I need a drink first, because, Tony's a little low-key alcoholic. He's a little bit of an alcoholic. And even it's in the comics, too, that he's an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah. Great run, too.
Where he ends up losing. I think he ends up losing the entire Stark Towers.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I was like,
a seriously dark line of comics there.
Which I was like, kind of weird. Why were you drinking after the actions of Iron Man 2? You got so drunk at your own house party. Why would you be drinking now? Drinking on the job, too? Dude, you're drinking on the job?
Right.
Well, yeah. But again, that's actually a really interesting sort of approach, because like it really addresses that Iron Man, like, or Tony's vulnerability is actually also the same vulnerability of Loki, which is his hubris. Like, Tony lives with this just narcissism that he can do no wrong. So of course he's going to believe he has complete control over his drinking, right? Just like he has control over all his tech. And that ultimately, at least in that particular run, is what becomes his undoing, is his belief that he can control the world. And that plays out in comic book mode in the MCU in Age of Ultron, where he can't control the technology.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of a beautiful foreshadowing in a sense.
Really, truly, yeah.
It really is.
We do get Tony, as you already mentioned earlier, Pete, calling the scepter the glow stick of destiny, which is great. Do you think, we've been kind of we have, Tony's nickname tracker that we've been running as he does his nicknames. Does this count as a nickname? I was like,
Absolutely.
It's not a person.
Yeah.
It totally counts.
Yeah.
Totally counts.
All right. Well, then this is number 6 of Tony's nicknames in this film. So just
Beautiful.
keeping track of all.
Have
of
we
these,
been keeping
absolutely.
track across all of the movies so far? Do we have a total nickname tracker?
I only
So
started
many.
with this film. I didn't start it with the first.
You know what? I'll
films.
start over. I'll start over
Yeah,
from the beginning.
we'll
and
jump
I'll start
back and-
just to track.
Just
Oh, there's so many. Best one is Point Break. That one, I heard
Yeah,
that. I
Point
was
Break.
laughing my butt off. It was perfect.
that is a great one. Absolutely.
And it's great because as Robbie Downey Jr., he loves to kind of keep the writers and the directors on his toes because he loves to improvise. And I think that was another improvised line for him. So I kind of want to hear the other ideas that he was thinking behind his head that he would have
right.
called.
Oh, he's got some good ones for sure.
100%. 100%. And his wardrobe's great. That's another two.
Yeah.
Lines in
Absolutely.
wardrobes.
He always is. Yeah. Just very fun outfits, and I mean, they're so casual. They're just casual, cool. I like what he's wearing.
Which is perfect for this specific minute, as he wears like just jeans and a t-shirt. He wears Black Sabbath, like the tour of like, I think it was like 97. I think it was the tour. I think
it's I know we talked about it in a previous minute. I can't remember specifically, but yeah, it was it was the tour where who did we decide? Was it Ozzy Osbourne? It was Ozzy Osbourne or David Lee Roth. One of those two went missing on the tour. Some crazy thing. So yeah, very funny.
Which was funny because I think the tour was called Never Say Die.
Right.
I think that was the shirt, and I live in a household full of Taylor Swift fans where Easter eggs are so small and little where you gotta, dissect the whole thing. But it's like, okay, you're wearing a shirt that says, based on a concert that's Never Say Die. This is the movie you chose to wear it. Or this phase. It's interesting. You know? And maybe I'm diving way too deep in the world of this movie. I'm sure it's just a t-shirt, Taylor, like relax. But still, it's just kind of funny.
Taylor, it's never just a t-shirt.
Right.
Kremlinology has no floor.
It's perfect. And once again, like with this whole dialogue of him like being all light and fluffy, he's not looking threatening. He's just like, Tuesday attire, grabbing a nice little glass of whiskey and calling it a day.
Right, exactly.
It's perfect.
I do have a question that I think may lead to a conversation far down the road, but I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. We've talked about the fact that Clint had this Quinjet from somewhere. We're not exactly sure. When they leave, it's Loki and the pilot that take off in the Quinjet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't know if Loki hopped out of the Quinjet and the pilot kind of took off and went somewhere else or went to land it. I'm not exactly sure. But I was wondering, in the scope of mysterious Quinjets over the course of the franchise, do you think that there's a possibility that the Quinjet that they took is the one that goes onto the black market that ends up in Natasha's hands in Black Widow?
Good
Look
question.
at you, speaking of Kremlinology. Well done. Interesting.
I was just like, Quinjets, are hard to come by. And that's something that her friend really points out. Like, how hard this was to get? I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There is this missing Quinjet that happens in this film.
Maybe. It would be really nice to add those pieces together. It would be very nice. That was them once again battling together. That was the plane that pretty much helped save New York. It'd be kind of cute, but
also they're working on a whole Disney Plus series that's all from the perspective of that pilot. It's just the pilot. It's called The Pilot Story.
Yes.
And
So excited for that.
His pet Quinjet traveling the world.
But is there a bilge snipe that he can travel with? That's the real,
That's
question. All right.
It's a good question. You threw me for a loop. It's a really good question. Loki is notorious jumping off planes, as we see multiple times in this film. He loves jumping off and, being all scary with his giant cape, like a Batman.
Jump off high things, right? He's a big jumper.
He is. All for the dramatics.
Oh, he is so that. Well, that's Loki. He's so dramatic.
It is.
So dramatic.
It's
God
perfect.
of mischief. God of drama.
Which is great. They did such a great job in this entire film because Loki really never had like the limelight in the comics, and then they gave him this.
Yeah.
Beautifully done.
Oh, and obviously Tom Hiddleston, you really kind of made the part what it is, because I don't think without Tom Hiddleston we would have ended up having a Loki TV show.
No, that or Matt Damon, though. Matt Damon's really good Loki, though.
True. Very true. Very true.
He's a fantastic Loki. If we couldn't have him, I would take that.
Very funny. Well, let's wrap today up. We'll have one more minute with you in kind of right now. We're going to talk about minute 101 with you, Taylor. So we'll come back for that. But before we take off, tell everybody about what you're doing over on Twitch TV.
For me, so I do Marvel Mondays with MarvelousTay. It's a lot of M's. It's practically like multiversal madness.
So many
M's. So I break down Marvel movies and TV shows to help everyone understand in an easier form that haven't been part of the comic book franchise, like myself, especially as new upcoming phase, to make it all easy and understandable. I play a variety of games. A lot of it's story driven, and we just kind of play with the community and just kind of have fun. That's the whole point. It's just to get away from life, be distracted, and watch me do the most shenanigan things.
That's awesome.
Well,
we will have the link for that along with your other socials in our show notes. So everybody check that out. MarvelousTay right here. And so that's it for today. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Minute 100.
Thank you so much for having me.
We had a blast. We'll be back on Monday with Minute 101. So Pete, thanks as always.
Tomorrow, Andy, we're going to the jeweler. Bracelets, right? It's a bracelet. It's a jeweler bracelet.
Beautiful.
That's right. That's right. Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.